Looks like everyone's coming in. Thank you all for joining us for this virtual breakout session on See the Future, How the Ocean Decade Can Empower the Next Generation of Ocean Ambassadors. We have a great panel set up for you this afternoon. I know 45 minutes will go quickly, so we want to go ahead and get it kicked off. My name is Letis LaFeir. I'm a senior advisor to the Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, but many of you know him as the NOAA administrator, Dr. Spinrad. I'm happy to be moderating this panel and appreciate again all of you coming. So as we get started, I first wanted to give the opportunity to hear from our co-chairs of the House and Senate, House Ocean Caucus and Senate Ocean Caucus. So we'll start first with recorded remarks from Representative Suzanne Bonamici, who is the co-chair of the House Ocean Caucus.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici from Northwest Oregon. I am the co-chair of the House Oceans Caucus and Congressional Estuary Caucus. Thank you to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, for inviting me to provide opening remarks for this Capitol Hill Ocean Week panel on the UN Decade of Ocean Science. Oregonians and people across the country and around the globe benefit from a healthy ocean. Clean beaches and waterways are critical to marine ecosystems and to the coastal industries that rely on them. The ocean regulates weather and climate, and its waves and winds generate renewable energy. The ocean nourishes us, allows us to travel, and offers us tremendous recreational opportunities. Coastal communities are a significant part of our nation's economy. About 40% of the population lives in coastal counties, and these regions account for about 56 million jobs and more than $8 trillion in economic output. Our coastal resources support outdoor recreation opportunities, commercial and recreational fishing, shipping, coastal science research, and much more. Unfortunately, these essential ecosystems are extremely susceptible to the changing climate. Today, our ocean and coastlines are threatened more than ever. The ocean has absorbed a significant amount of the heat from human-caused global warming and almost 1/3 of carbon dioxide emissions. Every day, the ocean bears the brunt of human actions. As our ocean continues absorbing heat, sea surface temperatures and climate patterns will change, and sea levels will rise, decimating our coastal communities. A recent interagency report led by NOAA found that U.S. coastlines will experience an additional 10 to 12 inches of sea level rise by 2050. The American people, and especially all of you here today, are looking to the President and Congress to tackle climate change and to protect our ocean and coasts. During the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, we can accomplish these goals and more. 6 months ago, Congress passed the most ambitious infrastructure legislation in the history of our nation. This important legislation included nearly $1 billion for coastal restoration, $200 million for marine debris prevention, mitigation, and removal, and more than $2 billion for investments in port infrastructure, including initiatives to reduce port pollution. Although this legislation is not sufficient to achieve our conservation and emissions reduction goals, it's a significant start. With the passage of monumental infrastructure legislation and this administration's climate forward agenda, momentum is on our side. I'm working to amplify these achievements by advancing policies vital to improving our understanding, management, and protection of our nation's coasts and ocean. As co-chair of the House Oceans Caucus and House Estuaries Caucus, I've worked to advance legislation to improve stewardship of our coastal and ocean resources. My bipartisan Coast Research Act will expand research and monitoring to improve our understanding of ocean and coastal acidification. My Blue Carbon for Our Planet Act will improve the mapping and conservation of blue carbon ecosystems. Both of these bills, along with the bipartisan Blue Globe Act, which would advance ocean, estuary, and Great Lakes research, passed the House as part of the America Competes Act. I'm grateful to have been appointed to the conference committee that will negotiate with the Senate on final legislation, and I'll be working to keep these critical provisions in the final bill. Finally, as co-chair of the House Oceans Caucus, I do want to acknowledge the passing of my friend and partner, Congressman Don Young. We're missing his leadership in the House, and I'm grateful to have worked with him to advance so many of these shared priorities. I'm also very excited to announce that Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon of Puerto Rico will be joining me as the House Oceans Caucus co-chair. I'm looking forward to working with her on furthering our vision for responsible ocean stewardship in the coming months. On behalf of the House Oceans Caucus, please know that we stand with you. We're eager to work together with you to advance meaningful ocean science during the UN decade. Thank you again for your leadership. I look forward to our continued work together to advance ocean climate action, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week during Capitol Hill Ocean Week. Thank you.
As many of you know, Representative Bonamici is a champion for ocean and Great Lakes issues, so appreciate her taking the time to provide those pre-recorded remarks. Next, I'd like to introduce another ocean champion, friends to many of us here on this panel and in this session right now, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, who is the co-chair of the Senate Oceans Caucus. Hello, Senator Whitehouse. I'll turn it over to you.
It is wonderful to be with all the Oceans Week folks here for the Ocean Decade. It's great that the Ocean Decade event is happening while we have CHOW, Capitol Hill Oceans Week, so that's good alignment. And we have some fairly good reports, I would say, out of the Senate. As Suzanne Bonamici noted, both Blue Globe and Blue Carbon are being discussed in conference in the competition bill. So when the Senate and the House agree on what the final bill is going to look like, that's what the conference does. Both bodies then pass it a second time in proper agreed form, and it goes to the president for signature. So if we can get both Blue Globe and Blue Carbon into this bill, it is truly on its way to becoming law. And I want to particularly recognize Representative Bonamici for her work there. Both of these bills originated in the Senate, but it was the House that got them in the competes bill. So we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the pressure that Representative Bonamici and her House colleagues put to get this into consideration and in conference. So we're very excited about that. The recent Nairobi deal on ocean plastics to set up a really strong framework to deal with ocean plastics got us off to a great start. My colleague Dan Sullivan and I are working on Save Our Seas 3.0 to add to Save Our Seas and Save Our Seas 2.0, which were part of the foundation for the Nairobi Agreement. So we hope we'll be announcing that fairly shortly, and that will be an added strength in our work against ocean plastics. And then we're also working on a pirate fishing bill, IUU fishing bill, it's called, to extend our series of pirate fishing, IUU fishing amendments that we've gotten into defense authorization bill after defense authorization bill, building up US capabilities to assist in the enforcement against the pirate fishing fleet generally, and Chinese predatory fishing activities more specifically. I'll wrap up by saying that we can do all those things and that'll be great, but the big deal, of course, is climate. And if we don't get climate emissions down, if we continue to bombard the ocean with excess heat, if we continue to bombard it with excess carbon dioxide, which causes it to turn acid, then we have a real problem on our hands. And in the Senate right now, between now and August, it will be fish or cut bait time on whether we can do a proper climate bill. It ought to have three elements to it. One is a significant set of clean energy tax credits. A second is a methane fee program, so it's no longer free to the oil and gas industry to leak methane into the atmosphere, and to put an incentive for people to stop it and deal with it where it's leaking. And the third is a carbon border adjustment that bakes a carbon price in so that countries are discouraged from cheating on being good climate citizens, and the better companies get rewarded for their investment in cleaner production. We can do those three things, and we've got the hydrofluorocarbons already going, then we've made an important first step, a real first step that will actually change our emissions trajectory and begin to put us on a pathway to safety. It will not put us on a pathway to safety. We will need to do more, but this would be the most, by far, significant thing we've ever done, and the first time we'd have ever changed the trajectory of emissions. I'll close by asking everybody to consider the zettajoule. The joule, J-O-U-L-E, is the unit of measure of heat and energy that is common in the world. A zettajoule is a unit of that with 21 zeros after it. So it's a really, really, really big number. If you take all of the energy production of all of humankind across all of the earth, it adds up to half a zettajoule. Half a zettajoule. And the segment of that half zettajoule that is generated by fossil fuel creates parameters in our climate, in our atmosphere, that are loading 14 zettajoules worth of excess heat into our oceans every single year. So we are being wildly inefficient with the waste heat that is associated with carbon emissions. The oceans are paying the price. They absorb 90% of the excess heat, and we have got to solve that problem as soon as possible. Thank you all for being advocates for the Ocean Decade, and thank you all, at least those of you who are around Washington, for being here for Capitol Hill Oceans Week.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Again, we appreciate all the support you've given in this space and on these issues. And thanks for all of you who are continuing to join. I see the numbers continue to go up. And again, I'm Letis LaFeir, Senior Advisor to the NOAA Administrator. And so with the remarks we've had from our Ocean Caucus co-chairs, both in the House and the Senate, I'll go ahead and do some framing for this session as we prepare to turn to our panelists. The United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, as many of us have been calling shorthand Ocean Decade, is a once-in-a-lifetime global program to expand scientific and industry partnerships that will support groundbreaking science, management, conservation, and sustainable development of the ocean. The Ocean Decade presents a tremendous opportunity for the United States to help shape the future of science, technology, and sustainable development and set the course for ocean science for the next 10 years and beyond. Advancing US ocean science, technology, and sustainable development capabilities through domestic and international partnerships enables the US to achieve its goals of safeguarding human health, tackling climate change, ensuring coastal resilience, and promoting economic prosperity. And these points are specifically tied to NOAA's work, which is why we're so closely engaged. And so I know it's also important to many of you, not only given NOAA's ocean mission, but also our role here in the Department of Commerce. We know that we are stronger together. Transformative national and international actions require strong communication and coordination between and among government agencies and non-governmental entities, including advocates and sponsors of decade actions, many of you on the call here. The Interagency Working Group on the Ocean Decade, a subsidiary body of the Ocean Policy Committee's Subcommittee on Ocean Science and Technology, includes over 20 federal agencies and commissions. This working group is critical to facilitating open communication, avoiding redundancies, and promoting partnerships and collaboration for the Ocean Decade. Our interagency team works closely with the groups represented on the panel today. So first, the NGO Consortium for the Decade is represented by Ms. Daniella Fernandez of the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. The Youth Advisory Council is represented by the co-chair of its second annual cohort, Mr. Shiv Goel. And last but not least, Dr. Brian Davis, who has been instrumental in securing funding for the nation's first decade collaborative center, which will be housed within the Georgia Aquarium. I have asked each of the panelists to spend 3 to 4 minutes giving a quick overview of their role and the role of their organizations and give their thoughts on how the decade can empower the next generation of ocean scientists, entrepreneurs, and dreamers. As we go through the panel, please go ahead and start posting your questions in the chat, and I'll work in those questions as part of the discussion after each of the panelists give their remarks. So first, I want to turn it over to Daniella Fernandez. Daniella, if you could turn on your camera. Daniella is an award-winning social entrepreneur, thought leader, and speaker on ocean innovation, technology, youth empowerment, and sustainability. At the age of 19, Daniella founded Sustainable Ocean Alliance, when she was a student at Georgetown University. 5 years later, the Sustainable Ocean Alliance has created the world's largest network of young ocean leaders in over 165 countries and launched the Ocean Solutions Accelerator to support developing technological solutions to address the greatest threats facing our planet. Daniella was also featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2019. And Daniella, I think we crossed paths while I was at Monterey Bay Aquarium. We had an awards event, the Benchley Awards, some years ago, and I was on staff at Monterey Bay Aquarium. So I was really excited to see the work you were doing, even starting then. So I will turn it over to you, Daniella, for remarks.
Thank you very much. And I'm so happy to be here, even if it's virtual. I would ask all of you, if you can, to turn your cameras on. It's always nice to talk to smiling faces, if possible. But if not, I will just continue with my remarks. You know, CHOW actually has a really special place in my heart because I actually spoke at it, I believe, back in 2017 or so, when I was still a sophomore at Georgetown University. So it's wonderful to be back here with you. Well, I do want to share my screen, if that is possible, to share a quick PowerPoint presentation with you. I think you can see my screen. Is that right?
Yes, we see it. We see it.
Okay, wonderful. So just to jump right in. As it was mentioned, I started the organization Sustainable Ocean Alliance back in 2014, actually, because I found myself attending a meeting at the UN where I was the only young person listening to the horrifying statistics that were being talked about in terms of our ocean and our planet. And so I realized that there was a pretty large disconnect in having my generation included in these private conversations. And the other realization that I had at the time was the fact that every single person that got up and spoke on stage, whether it be a CEO, a head of state, an ambassador, kept talking about the problems that we're facing in the ocean, and yet no one talked about solutions. So leaving that convening, I realized that there was a need for a platform to be built to connect the next generation and also to involve them in building solutions. And so fast forward, I guess, year 2022, at Sustainable Ocean Alliance, we have developed 2 programs. One program focuses on empowering this army of young people in over 165 countries to build these ocean solutions we so desperately need. In addition to that, we have also supported for-profit ocean technology companies. So companies that are using wave energy, for example, like CalWave, to produce sustainable electricity for island nations, or companies like LaFeir that are using seaweed to replace plastic as an entity. So we have a large portfolio of solutions in our programs, and I would encourage all of you to check out our latest impact report, in which we now have a database of 222 ocean solutions. So if you're looking for inspiration and to find some sense of hope, definitely check out that report. It's called our 222 Ocean Solutions Report. Here are just some statistics of our impact to date. We have supported 45 of these for-profit technology companies that are ocean positive, which means that they are having a positive impact in the ocean. They're measuring their climate and ocean impact, and they're finding ways of replacing traditional business models that have been harming our planet. We also support youth leaders on the ground. So we provide micro grant funding between $1,000 and $10,000 US. We've done over 177 of these micro grants to support young leaders in planting coral reefs, planting mangroves, raising awareness about the problems around plastic pollution. So we believe in the theory of change being from the bottom up. So we ask our young leaders what they're seeing in their communities. We try to understand where they're coming from, and then we empower them with mentorship, with resources and funding to make their own ideas come to life. This is a type of organization that I wish I had when I first set out on my own climate journey, because as a young person, the reality is that you don't have a lot of I would say possibilities, or you don't necessarily have a roadmap to follow. And so at SOA, we are now that roadmap and that pathway for young people all over the world. Well, with that, I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of the organization. And to close my remarks, I do want to remind all of us here that we are living in this era in which this generation is the first generation in which the future is uncertain to us. Our livelihood is uncertain, and we truly have an existential crisis on our hands. And yet not many people are acting in accordance with this reality. So to close, I just want to encourage all of you and our political leaders to act with urgency, to set short-term goals. We're not looking for 10 to 20 to 30-year goals, but rather 2 to 3-year goals, and to set radically ambitious milestones, because this ocean decade is the only period of time we have left to change the trajectory of our planet. And it's scary to think about it in that way, but at the same time, we have the talent, we have the resources, we have the technology. All we need to do is channel all of that energy and empower this next generation to work with the people in power to generate more solutions. So thank you for your time, and please feel free to reach out to me or Sustainable Ocean Alliance to get more involved.
Thank you so much, Daniella. That's really inspiring, and I appreciate that you took that moment to create change and that you're pushing for that to continue. That's what it's all about. So thanks so much. And we'll turn back to you with some questions here soon. Next, I want to introduce Dr. Brian Davis. If you could please turn on your camera. He's the CEO and president of Georgia Aquarium, and he's been with Georgia Aquarium since before times, as we say. He was actually a part of the group that helped inspire the creation of Georgia Aquarium. And as I learned from him recently, he's an educator at heart and carries that with him everywhere. He previously served as the director of education and later the aquarium's vice president of education and executive vice president of operations. So now he is one of our close partners in the UN Ocean Decade work. So I will turn it over to you, Dr. Davis, to give some remarks.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me okay?
You're coming through loud and
Can you
clear.
hear me
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
I want to start really by thanking Daniella. Daniella, you are inspiring. So thank you for your energy, and thank you for pursuing those, having the sort of gusto to be able to say, I'm going to go after this and I'm going to make a difference. So I want to thank you. You mentioned something very interesting, Daniella. You said that there were a lot of times that young people, they didn't know where to go. And I could tell you, I was that person. My love for the ocean happened really early on. I spent my summers on the coast in New Jersey and totally fell in love with the ocean because we spent time there every summer. And in that time, I gained an appreciation, but also from a very young age, was quite saddened by the amount of litter I would see or trash that was in place, and always kept this sort of overwhelming feeling of, how can I fix this? And I've been fortunate enough in my life to have had the opportunity to play a role in sort of shaping how people see and feel about the ocean. And one of my earliest connections with the ocean came from the idea of visiting a national aquarium pretty early on, and then making that sort of connection about I have a passion about doing this for the animals that live and thrive in this space. And it was through time that I got to learn and understand a bit more about the power and the importance and the respect deserved of the ocean. My journey was very interesting because typically the people that were in the room that wanted to have conversations about ocean conservation did not look like me. So that was a mental barrier for me about how do I get engaged in this conversation. But my love and my passion for the animals that were part of the ocean and the ocean itself actually propelled me forward and pushed through. And before you know it, I had my first internship working at an aquarium. And it was at that moment that I really learned and understood my calling in this space, and it was through education. You see, that whole time up until that point, I was just reading and understanding and experiencing the ocean. But then when I had individuals standing before me, a lot of them students and young students that were equally as amazed by the ocean, equally intrigued by the animals that live, grow, equally intrigued by the plants that were a part of the ocean. And I was the conduit for them to be able to better understand the ocean. That sparked something in me that I had no idea existed. And if I hadn't been given that opportunity, I don't know where I would have been. I have carried throughout my journey this idea that education and connection is critically important. And for people to really get actively engaged in what's happening in the ocean and what to do to protect it, they have to understand the role the ocean plays for themselves, but they also have to gain a greater appreciation and healthy respect for the ocean. And for me, being a part of the aquarium affords us an opportunity to be able to do that. I get to play a role in helping our staff and our guests and millions of visitors have that first initial connection about the ocean and the power. Where we sit in Georgia, we are 5 hours from the coast. So we are the exposure oftentimes for a lot of individuals to get to see the animals that live in aquatic ecosystems for the first time, but also understand the complexity of those ecosystems and the issues that those ecosystems are facing. For me, being involved in the Ocean Decade, that was just automatic for us. We have an opportunity to partner with so many entities here to be able to solve the critical issues that are plaguing the ocean and what people can do on a day-to-day basis, how they need to be able to walk out and behave in the space, how they may choose to drive differently, how they may choose what to do and how to recycle, looking for a sustainable projects. But this provides us, this Sea of the Future opportunity provides us with the opportunity to engage young people when their minds are wide open, where oftentimes we can get a little older and our minds get narrow and closed a bit. I love the idea that we are engaging young people in this process. They are not oftentimes constricted by the ideas that we put in our heads. So the Oceans Project, being involved with the Decade Oceans, it's just wonderful for us. And Georgia Aquarium decided that we were going to partner with some entities and decide that we were going to look for innovative solutions. And it's based on that that we've become this collaborative center and working in partnership to figure out how we're going to solve some of these critical issues facing our oceans. We know the natural habitat is not perfect right now. It's pretty far from perfect in many respects. The climate's changing, pollution's growing, and the food sources are not always there and readily available for some species to be able to thrive the way that they need to. Because of that, Georgia Aquarium clearly understands that it is in part important for us to partner with entities like NOAA and the UN and other school systems and universities and students and young people from around the globe to figure out what we can do. And more importantly, we're going to get out there and support this financially put some economic, some funds towards this process, because the ocean's just that important to us. And with that, I'm not going to take up more time. I know we're running a little behind. I'm just glad to be a part of this panel. I'm glad we're having this discussion, and I am so energized about the future.
Thanks so much, Dr. Davis. Appreciate that. And I'll quickly say that it's because of aquariums in my life that I'm a marine scientist, but I'm in the position I'm in today. So kudos to the work aquariums are doing. And finally, I'd like to introduce Shiv Goel on our panel. He's the co-chair of the Youth Advisory Council for the Ocean Decade, and he's a high school student. So I'm going to start with that he's rocking it as a senior in high school, graduating soon, and making sure we have this very clear connection on youth engagement for the Ocean Decade. So Shiv, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that okay?
Yes, it's coming through.
Great. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Shiv Goel, and I'm the co-chair of the U.S. Youth Advisory Council for the United Nations Ocean Decade. As a heads up, I may refer to the U.S. Youth Advisory Council as the Advisory Council, the U.S. YAC, or simply the YAC. So the U.S. YAC for the UN Ocean Decade's mission is to engage a diverse group of youth to further the decade's goals in a way that best serves the generation of the youth in each of their communities, with a commitment to encouraging and supporting action, agency, and inclusion, as well as the skill building of YAC members. We do so through three main levers of change, being education, movement, and policy. We recently hosted a youth summit to celebrate World Oceans Day and have presented to over 100 youth across the country in the past year on ocean sciences and the decade's work. The US is the first country in the world to have a YAC, and the council started as a concept and project established by the global youth-led nonprofit organization Heirs to Our Oceans, which is currently working to establish other YACs around the world. The YAC is committed to promoting diversity and equity, both of which must be twofold, for a more inclusive and sustainable ocean conservation movement, including youth and people of color. For obvious reasons, youth activists are the future. We are the stakeholders with the most at chance, the most to lose in this fight. People in power can often dismiss and chide youth activists, telling us that we're doing great work and we're inspiring, as they themselves contribute further to the climate crisis and marine pollution. But for true impactful change, youth must be brought to the table to be heard and to be understood. I'm honestly confident and thankful in saying that the UN Ocean Decade is a leader within the space that does promote youth voices, from working to establish youth advisory councils, like the one I'm with, and to providing opportunities uplifting young people like myself, including this event. As we speak, the UCAC is actually in the midst of our Hill Days, where we're conversing with congressional legislators regarding ocean-centric legislation, like the Ocean-Based Climate Solution Act, the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Act, the Red Hill WAI Act, and more. Opportunities like these really enable young people to engage in the democratic process and learn more about environmental policy in depth in ways that really would not be possible without the decade support. People of color truly experience the brunt of environmental problems, being more likely to live in frontline coastal communities, suffering from water pollution at exorbitant levels and more. The UCAC is proud to play host to 14 young people, almost everyone coming from a marginalized community of some sort. Change cannot be truly just or meaningful without being intersectional, consisting of the inclusion of those suffering most directly at the hands of the climate crisis. I myself have even experienced discrimination within the environmental movement, between loss of opportunities to folks with more privilege or renown and to blatant disregard for opinions of myself and other people of color in certain spaces. Brian remarked earlier about his experiences as a young person, not seeing other people of color in the space. And honestly, I'm very thankful today for trailblazers like you, Brian and Daniella, for making it possible for BIPOC youth like myself to get involved, and the decade for promoting intersectionality in ways that really are unparalleled. And that's really for my remarks. If you are interested in contacting us in the future or have further questions, please feel free to email me. If you would like more information on the YAC's work, join our newsletter by emailing Emily Berglund, and consider following us on social media at USYAC-UNOD. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiv. You covered a lot of ground there, and I'm recognizing that we are very short on time. So what I'm going to do is to try to ask a couple quick questions if all the panelists can come back on the screen. We had a chance to learn some about the Decade Collaborative Centers, a bit about the Youth Advisory Committee, and just overall engagement. And so first I'll ask one really high level question. In each of your roles, what's your vision for the ocean decade coming in 2030? So what do you envision by the end of this decade? I'll start with you, Danielle.
Thank you. Well, I think that it's less about what I envision and more what we desperately need. and that's the way that we need to see the world. I would say that we need to be in a state where we're regenerating, sustaining, and re-engineering the way in which we interact with our planet. And that goes everywhere, everything from reimagining business models that are currently harming our environment, to building out different products that are harming our environments to heal our planet, all the way to in the way that we incorporate communities that are on the ground, that are experiencing climate change firsthand. So I think we just need a revolutionary change in society and industry for us to really meet the targets that have been set out by the Ocean Decade.
And Dr. Davis, your thoughts, especially through this collaborative center and that sort of the educational platform you have.
When I look at 2030, I really want to see that in essence, the ocean is valued and respected. And that will come in many, many, many forms. I think for a long time, the ocean has been used as a space to put things, and we really didn't have much regard for the ocean. You can put whatever you want into the water and it'll kind of go away because it's a big, massive system and it can pretty much handle everything. But I truly would like for people to recognize that the engine for this planet can get taken care of in a very different manner. Yes, we need to be thoughtful about the sustainability of products that we're using. What should happen with fertilizers? What should we be doing to engage the broadest audience possible to fight on behalf of the ocean? I am engaged with the idea of ensuring that as many people walk out of this building with a greater appreciation and respect for our oceans as possible. And I will continue to scream that from the mountaintops. So from 2030 and beyond, it will continue to be at the forefront of what happens at Georgia Aquarium and what I continue to do until as long as I'm a part of this planet.
I think we're all happy to join you on that mountaintop and add to the chorus screaming. Shiv, any thoughts from you, especially if there are ways to get more young people engaged in the Youth Advisory Council or other ways as we look toward that 2030 vision?
Absolutely. I mean, I think in today, especially, we're seeing unprecedented levels of youth voices being involved in spaces like this. And continuing on that path is so incredibly important if we are to see a truly equitable ocean and equitable space for ocean access. Danielle, you mentioned the word regeneration, which is something that has always been really important to me, because at this point, like, sustainability isn't enough. We need to be putting forth initiatives that are bringing back levels of ocean health. It's all too easy for things like economic mechanisms to steamroll over environmental concerns. The ocean is truly linked to the cultural identities of people on this planet, to our histories, and to our collective health and well-being. We cannot continue forward the way we are, even at this current level. We need to be thinking back to our roots if we are to push for change in the future.
Going back to our roots was a big part of many of plastic pollution campaigns, right? Like, our grandparents didn't use this junk. They wouldn't be caught at their dinner table with these disposables. But even if you think millennia before, restoration wasn't in many languages of indigenous peoples because they cared for it. They were already stewards, so there wasn't that need for restoration. But we're at this point where we have to conserve and restore and protect and do all the things, including regenerate in some cases. So I appreciate you bringing that into the picture. And so I guess as we look to close out, overall, how can we leverage the Ocean Decade itself to really empower the next generation. So some will, like you all, will participate directly in Ocean Decade, but how do we just empower a broad youth engagement? And I think all of you probably have slightly different perspectives, but really using this platform to get youth empowered and inspired to engage in ocean conservation and science. Anyone want to jump on that first?
Well, I'll start with that. I think for us, being a collaborative center, we're going to be able to tap in directly. We see physically about 200,000 school kids on any given year. And just to be able to tap into that audience and get them engaged in how to solve some of the problems related to the oceans, as well as partnering with some of our universities. But also, I get the distinct pleasure of serving as the chairman of the board of directors for all accredited zoos and aquariums through AZA. So we can use this as an opportunity to channel millions of individuals having an opportunity to see what we can do as far as recruitment to get people actively engaged in the Decades Project. So I'm excited about that opportunity of being able to broaden the base of individuals. Shiv talked about this. We need as many people at the table possible having these conversations, a whole range of diverse audiences to be able to have the conversation. So I am excited about being able to get the messaging out and talk about how we can recruit, raising the awareness in the community, the visibility of the ocean, and putting those things at the forefront.
Diversity makes a difference in making better decisions. That's for sure. Shiv and Daniella, any thoughts on just this effort to empower more youth?
Yeah, real quick, I think the decade is truly unique in that it's a massive cross collaboration of NGOs and governments, institutions, and individuals for the sole purpose of promoting ocean sciences awareness. And I think it's had an incredible impact and has tremendous potential in leveraging the decade to bring in folks from other marginalized groups, like Brian mentioned, so that we can broaden the scope of what's out there. Data sharing and access to resources regarding our oceans and that kind of information is essential. And I think making that accessible and truly equitable for folks from marginalized communities, from low-income groups in other nations is definitely the path forward, is something that the decade has been really powerful in doing so.
When I think about the decade, I think about three key pillars. I think one of them is science. The second one is education. The third one is action. So just to quickly break down those three. The first one being the fact that the decade is rooted in science. And that's the reality that not a lot of politicians or corporations can look away from anymore, because now we have the science at our fingertips and we have to act according to the science. So I think that's one powerful aspect of the decade. The second thing is that we need to demystify involvement in the ocean space. People still believe that they need to have an ocean degree, they need to have a Ph.D. in marine biology. I myself, I'm a economics and government major from Georgetown, and my ocean education truly has come from doing the work, from being in the ocean and talking to the people that are on the ground, building coral reefs and building mangrove forests. And so I think that we need to involve and open up the ocean space to people from every sector. Whether you're an accountant, whether you're an artist, a dancer, a marketer, you can get involved. We need your skills and your passion and your intellect in this space. So I think that's where education comes in. If we can educate more people as to how they can get involved in the ocean space, that's when we're going to have a real groundswell of individuals that are actively doing something for the ocean, not just thinking that, being marine biologists is their lost passion or the lost life. And the third one around action is we don't have time to debate this anymore or to write more white papers. I'm sorry, white papers are amazing, but we need to act, we need to roll up our sleeves and build technology. We need to build solutions. We need to go out there and clean up the coast. So, I honestly feel as if there is so much optimism and hope in the world because people are finally waking up and going out and actually doing things as opposed to only debating and talking about it. So that's the way I would encapsulate the three big pillars of the ocean decade.
That's a great way to wrap up. And my colleagues hear me say all the time, well, everyone can be an ocean champion. So I'm constantly trying to bring people into the ocean space, like and ocean, because we all can be, despite our different passions and sectors. And just making sure everyone understands that the ocean, our one connected ocean, is connected to all of us too. Like making that connectivity is key. So I just want to thank all of you for being panelists on this session, in this session, and showing your dedication to not only the ocean decade, but to ocean conservation broadly. And thanks to all those of you who attended today. If you're interested, you can find out more in the Global Stakeholder Forum. There are more ocean-minded professionals who participate in that Global Stakeholder Forum. I think there might be a way for us to send additional information. If you have any questions or want to follow up at all, Caitlin, if you're on, maybe just put your email here in the chat, and that way everyone can follow up with you for any questions. And I think we are a wrap. Thank you all.
Thank you, Letis. Great seeing you, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Take care, Daniella and Shiv. See you all soon.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.